Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Reline Live. It's also Trenchless Tuesday, and it's October 3rd, so we'll be highlighting this later on all of our social channels. Today, we've got Michael and Dawn. Michael works with me at Reline Solution. Dawn is the owner of DL Views. We are all consultants in the pipe world and the culvert world. And we've got a really cool product called Channeline that we represent. And we're going to be highlighting some of our projects that we've worked on, as well as Dawn has worked on with this product. Little housekeeping. I am just moderating this. I'm going to let these guys kind of run the show today. But if you guys have any questions, wow, we've got a lot of people on today. That's exciting. If you guys have questions, please put them in the chat box, the Q&A box. I'll be fielding questions and I'll be jumping in and making sure these guys get them answered. If we go a little bit over 30 minutes, no big deal. The other thing is, I know some of you, we've got a lot of engineers on the call. If you guys need the CEU credits, just email me following this and I will get those certificates to you. All right, Michael, I'll let you kick this off.
All right. Thanks, Cassie.
Yep.
So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to type those over in the question box, and Cassie will make sure to get those over to Don and I. And with that, we will jump into today's agenda. So first things first, if you're not familiar, it'll be an introduction. If you are familiar, it'll be a quick refresher on what is Channeline. From there, we'll go over the CDOT pilot project, go over a couple quick previous installations, and then I will pass it off to Don for the East Coast ongoing projects that he's currently on site for. So what is Channeline? Channeline is a fiberglass liner. It is a glass reinforced plastic pipe. It was first developed in 1984 in the UK, and over the past 40 years has been installed in close to 40 countries. And with Channeline, you get pretty much as good as it gets. You get a 100+ year design life, a fully structural design, a Mannings of 0.009 to really see those flow increases. And over those last 40 years, there are no known failures. And as you'll see throughout some of these pictures throughout the presentation, whether we're dealing with a 4x6 arch metal pipe or a 14x4 foot concrete box culvert, we would be able to design those with as much or as little annular space as you need to provide both a smooth install and also as much flow increase as you want. Well, not as much as you want, but as much as we can get you with the smaller amount of annular space. And with Channeline, that's because you're able to design as much cross-sectional area as you can get with that hose pipe condition, as there's no incremental changes in diameter. So if you have a 14-foot diameter hose pipe and you want a 13-foot, 6.5-inch OD, or if you want a 12.5-foot OD, we can make either of those happen. And from there, depending on the project, Channeline may be the only product in the world that can give you a 100+ year design life with a fully structural design and those drastic increases in flow capacity for that specific project. If there's any deflections, curves, bends, or need for an improved inlet, Channeline can do all those as well, which I believe will highlight some of those examples throughout this presentation. So with Channeline, there are two joints at play here. There is the bell and spigot joint that is used to connect one 8-foot lay length to the next 8-foot lay length. And then there's the tongue and groove joint as well for the multi-segmental liners. So if you are multi-piece segmental liners. So if you're ever shipping over a larger diameter Channeline pipe, it'll be broken down into potentially 2 or more pieces and then adhered together out in the field to give you what is still, well, the adhesive in the joint still has the same structural integrity as the pipe wall itself. And to see those joints in action, so the pictures on the right are showing that tongue and groove joint. The picture on the top right is from the finished install of the 16-foot diameter project that was installed in Detroit, Michigan last year. And you can see where that adhesive was used. And then you can see in the bottom right picture, those pieces as they were nested in the containers before they were sent over. And then with that bell and spigot joint, similar to a lot of the other culvert rehab products we represent, the gasket is going to be used for that watertight seal. Some lubricant will be provided as well to help expedite that process and have it slide right into place, which I'll show you as well. So getting into the Colorado DOT pilot project, this was a CDOT design build. TZAC Heavy Equipment, now Wholesome US, was the contractor on it. And then Wilson and Company was the engineer for this project. There were 4 7.5 foot by 9.5 foot concrete box culverts. So considering this, these culverts were undersized, they had to max out that annular space, and they designed the liner to be 7 foot, 2.55 inches by 9 foot, 3.87 inches. And on top of that, they improved the inlet piece a little bit as well. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a few slides. And as far as the primary reason why they had to really open up the toolbox and find Channeline was because these culverts were under US 24, which for those of you who aren't familiar with the geography around here, US 24 is one of the main highways getting you from, or it is the main highway, getting you from Colorado Springs to Leadville, Salida, Breckenridge, and a lot of those other State Highway 9 cities. So with as far as why they wanted to rehabilitate these culverts, pretty much pick a picture and you'll find a reason why. There were massive gashes in the hose pipe. There was missing invert at times. There was exposed rebar, and overall just a lack of structural integrity. So they could not afford for this pipe to fail. So they got ahead of it and went ahead and slip lined it with Channeline. And for getting the pipe to the job site, the liner was unloaded and staged off site. And you can see here what that nested, broken down multi-piece segmental liner looks like, as well as on the left side of that picture, some of those liners, once they were adhered together out in the field, and they just went in waves, adhered them together, brought them over the hose pipe as they were working on that specific run.
Hey, Michael, since you were on site on this install and I wasn't, the pieces on the left, that adhesive, how long does that take to cure before it can be put together with the bell and spigot?
Good question, Cassie. Yeah, so it will reach 75% of strength in about 30 minutes, and then it'll reach full strength in 2 hours. So considering the size of this project, they just kind of allocated half a day and just adhered all the pipes together. And then from there, they brought them over to the job site one by one. But yeah, forgot to touch on that.
So they let them sit for 2 hours though, so they were fully adhered before they started the bell and spigot connections.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. Perfect. So that will take us to when they started bringing them over to the job site. One by one, they unloaded them, brought them down to the pit, and I will show you guys here a video of how easy that bell and spigot joint connects. Nope, hopefully that worked. Good.
Yeah, it's slow motion, but it's working.
Okay, perfect. So that is how easy they connect together. And then from there, as I mentioned before, the bottom of the hose pipe was completely missing at times. So they needed to lay down some old guardrail, but simple enough. That's all they needed to actually slide it down with ease. That one looked like it worked a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, so from there it was clockwork. There at the peak of their, I guess you say flow, they were getting these liners installed in under 3 hours. So that includes the fact that they had the pipe staged several miles offsite. We're bringing them to the job site one by one and connecting them together. So 3 hours for 65 feet using 8-foot lay lengths. I'd say for first time install, that's a pretty good rate. And this will also give you a glimpse of some of the traffic that was going over the top of this culvert, which I'm sure we're very thankful for what we were doing. So had they dug up this road, it would have sent them on, depending on where you were going and where you started from, easily a 2-hour detour from point A to point B. Or had they gone through some of these 4-wheel drive neighborhoods that normally get a daily traffic rate of maybe 100 to 150 cars per day, I'm not sure what kind of disasters would have been caused by sending 10,000 plus cars, but I'm not sure CDOT would ever want to find that out. So wrapping up the CDOT fluorescent pilot projects. These are the most recent pictures I have from before they finished up with the head wall. But you can see here the slightly flared end to improve this culvert that was under inlet control conditions. And then you can also see a quick shot at how much annular space they had designed. So this one really did fit like a glove. They needed to max out every bit of the flow rate and then add the improved inlet to make sure they got the hydraulics they needed.
Just to clarify, when Michael calls it the pilot project, it was specifically a pilot project for Colorado DOT because it was their
Correct.
first installation of Channeline. Dawn has a ton of projects that have been installed for years, going forward. or going back. So that's just what we're calling it because it's the first one with Colorado Department of Transportation.
Yes. Perfect. Thanks, Cassie. So before I pass it off to Don, I'll go over a couple previous installs in case any of my Utah or Nevada folks are on this call. We're looking at a couple similar sized and shaped projects. So figured I'd share them while everybody was on. But for this one, my project that we're looking at does not include the wildlife walkway shelf, but it's one of the most unique projects I've ever seen. So figured I'd share it. This was a large diameter arch pipe, again, with that wildlife walkway shelf. I did not know this until we started representing Channeline, but apparently at least some kind of otter does not like getting their feet wet. So especially in those high flow conditions, the otters are able to hop up on this wildlife walkway shelf and continue on without mission accomplished, without getting their feet wet. So figured I'd share that one because really, guys, if you have any curveball to your projects, just let us know what it is. I can't imagine Channeline will say no to it. And then for my last previous install, we're looking at a project right now with a couple 45-degree bends. So I wanted to share this one as well. This one was under the Raw Space Cemetery in Victoria, BC. It was a longer run that included 61-inch by 39-inch arch liner and included I think it was 6 drop structures on this one and 12 bends or vice versa. So wanted to share it. And as you guys can see here with the drawing and then with the picture from the install, Channeline was able to provide a seamlessly curved liner that maxed out that cross-sectional area, increased flow capacity, and now they won't have to worry about this culvert under this cemetery for another 100+ years. So a couple options there. And with that, thank you guys for your time, and I will pass it off to Don.
Howdy. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Great. So apologize in advance. I'm actually in upstate New York sitting on we're putting a channel line in underneath about 20 feet of cover, and it's going really well. So if you hear any traffic, I apologize. But I want to thank Cassie and Michael for inviting me. It's really cool to always join them for these types of things, these events. The one you see in front of you here was Maine DOT's first box culvert liner, and the sheer fact that we have the ability to slip line box culverts nowadays, in my opinion, is a huge advantage. I can remember having been in this industry now for 15 years, as recent as 5 years ago, before Channeline became part of our portfolio here in the Northeast, I'd get engineers calling, say, hey, can we put a circular pipe through this box culvert? There's too much of a loss, usually 99% of the time, in the hydraulics there. So the fact that we can put a square inside of a square or a rectangle inside of a rectangle it's a huge, as Mike put it, tool in the toolbox for engineers and owners alike. So this is pretty much a beautiful country in countryside in Maine, up by Canada. It changed shape, it changed geometry, the hose pipe, about 4 times, and a variety of different materials, as you can see in this culvert. The one in the center of the slide is looking up at the ceiling. You can tell how structurally deficient it was. And then obviously the sidewall there in the right-hand photo just completely blown out. If you could advance there, Cassie, that'd be great. So they used a push plate, as you saw in Michael's previous slides, built out of some heavy-duty lumber and advanced those forward. You can see the center photo, they had the outlet all cut out and ready to go. The pipe on the right-hand side with the DOT examining it, and then on the left-hand side, all of the pipe in the hole now, and the bypass being put through the liner while we build our bulkheads and grout. This was a couple of seasons ago. This was a unique application, and hopefully with any luck, we'll see a second phase of this project. But this project involved daylighting a massive part of this stream on site at the Boston Market Terminal. And then they enclosed part of it with a 13 by 16 clamshell precast box culvert. And that's why we built that one little section. I shouldn't call it little because it was quite massive, 12 by 15 foot box culvert on the right-hand side of that top right photo is the box, and the top left photo. And that was built in segments, as you can see in the bottom right photo. And then it transitioned into a 12 by 8 foot pipe arch. And as with most culverts or storm drains, in my opinion, the prep work is the bulk of the scope. These guys had about 3 feet of black silt to dig out of that culvert before they could start lining. So fantastically done. And they also were working up against tide that came in and out of that hole every 6 hours. So only about 52 linear feet of pipe, but quite a massive undertaking for that small amount of pipe.
So Dawn, did they slide the arch pipe in first until they got to the end to the inlet control device?
That's correct.
They just
Yep.
kept okay.
Yep. And then they telescoped that Channeline box culvert. They telescoped that into the precast and built a bulkhead in there so they could grout that 52 feet of pipe in.
Any idea what the inlet control device helped increase flow into that pipe?
It wasn't more, so in this instance, it wasn't for inlet improvement. It was more for transitioning from the double clamshell precast into the existing arch, multi-plate arch that you see there on the bottom left. So
okay.
They were basically taking, and the interesting thing about this project, if I have my facts straight here, is this project crosses city lines from Everett into Chelsea, Massachusetts. So you had kind of a bilateral interest in getting this portion fixed. So it was just to get that transition from the Boston Market Terminal site across the city line into their driveway, to get that fixed. So it was a unique application for sure.
Cool. All right. Yeah.
This one is a project that I had known about for, geez, dang near 6 or 7 years. We had looked at other types of segmental liners to slip line this pipe. It was a county project in New York, and they had known that to maintain hydraulics, they needed something that matched the geometry of the pipe, so an arch pipe in this situation, and they needed something that could really maximize Manning's coefficient and be able to tie in with the laterals on the side of the road. Turns out we could have made this liner a little bigger. There was some hesitation, if you can see in the top left photo there, in getting a really good cleaning inside this hose pipe of all those silts on the right-hand side, because of the condition of the invert, as you can see in that photo. So they didn't want to go in there with any heavy blasting or anything. I think they could have cleaned it a lot better, in my opinion, with a vac truck or something. But as you can see in that top right photo, we probably could have made the vertical component of this liner at least 6 to 10 inches taller. But a really, really neat triple barrel pipe arch. We put some laterals in at the plant so they could just tie right into those. I might even have a photo in the next slide, Cassie. I'm not sure. Yeah, there you go. So as you can see, there's laterals are just tied right into the channel line. So they're able to, you see the top left photo, they were able to open up the shoulder, just cut up basically like a 5 by 8 hole in the ground in the shoulder, keep the traveling public moving, and tie in their catch basin drainage right into the newly lined culvert. And then the bottom photo there is the completed project.
So we have a couple of questions that have come in. Is this a good time to break in and ask those?
By all means.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know the answer to this. I'm going to let you answer it though. Is there a need to fill the entire void between the existing structure to maintain structural integrity?
Yeah, so that is a question we often get asked, and with any segmental liner, my answer is almost always yes. The idea behind filling the void and any other void, or I should say the annulus and the voids, is to stabilize your road. So we prefer, now we realize that in some instances, some clients of ours have skipped the grouting completely. We would recommend anytime you can get the grout in there, right? Because that's going to help stabilize things, prevent further movement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, we recommend grouting as often as you can.
Another question is, what's the longest section of connected pipe that can be pushed through an existing structure?
So that's a I'll give my opinion, Michael, Cassie, if you guys want to add to it, please, by all means. But it's all about friction, right? So we've done hundreds, thousands of feet from one entry point, and depending on how the contractor or the installer decides to tackle it, if you can reduce that friction component and push and or pull. Now, one of the things I'll say about Channeline that's beautiful is a very commonly used method of installation is to pull and or push one section in at a time, which is a huge benefit, because unlike a continuous pushing train, like you've seen in those box culvert photos we shared with you today, you can actually take one segment in at a time, which greatly reduces the amount of weight that you have to push or pull. And you can actually home these bells and spigots inside the hose pipe, which is what we're doing literally right underneath my pickup truck right now. So we have, I don't know, I think it's like 400 feet of pipe, and they're bringing one section in at a time using a come along basically, or a chain pull, and bringing them into the hose pipe. And it's an 8-foot long section, and those are being homed inside the hose pipe. So it's really just, it's indefinite depending on what kind of installation procedure you have. Depends on the installation situation.
And in my experience, which Michael can give his opinion on this too, I've been on site where we can push 900 feet, 1200 feet. It really depends on the size, what you're pushing. And it really comes down to your equipment. At the end of the day, how much can your equipment push, right? So sometimes that's the limitation as well.
Yeah, and we can correct this before we post the video if I'm wrong, but I believe Andy said the longest run of Channeline they've ever done is about a half mile. So pretty substantial length right there.
Yeah. More questions coming in before we move on. This in one of the slides on the St. John plantation in Maine, it shows flexible pipe discharging water through the new Reline culvert. Was this dewatering while installation was still taking place? Have there been examples where the contractor was able to have an active dewatering pipe passing through the Reline pipe as it was installed?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit more work to move your bypass every time you've got to put in a brand new piece of pipe. So if you can do like what Michael showed in his photos, I think, Michael, if I'm correct, it looked like your hose actually rode down in the channel of your guide rail there. That was pretty clever, and bypassed while you were, underneath the liner essentially while you were slip lining. But we've also, it's worth mentioning with this type of pipe with Channeline that you can actually line in the wet. About 45 minutes north of me right now, we put in a 11-foot by a 9-foot vertical ellipse with 2.5 feet of flowing water. But also in culverts, it's worth noting that we can do that too.
Yep.
So I hope that helped answer the question.
Yeah, I think so. If not, Mason, let us know if you have any more questions on that. We've got another question about the recommended grout specs. That kind of varies per the annulus. I mean, do you want to speak to that, Dawn, on the grout specs? I mean, it really does depend on the job.
It does depend on the job. I would say 80 to 85% of the time, maybe even more. We prefer cellular concrete due to pumpability, due to reduction in buoyancy force. Flow fill doesn't want to typically travel much further than 50 to 60 linear feet. So if you can use a lightweight cellular concrete, that is our preference, realizing that sometimes groundwater can be a nuisance and that those things need to be tackled, as Cassie said, on a case-by-case basis. But we can help you write the grout specs for this liner and any other segmental liner that you work on with Cassie and Michael or myself. We can help you with those specs as well. It's what we do. So the annulus is part of the total package of what we offer.
Awesome. So I've answered all the questions, so we'll keep going, but keep bringing them if you guys have questions. We're here for another 6 minutes. So
yeah, I'm gonna go fast. All right. All right. So this was one that we did Interstate 88, kind of a unique thing, whereas speculation tell the ways here in the Northeast, I'm sure out your way too, Cass and Michael, but instead of the invert being completely bad, it was actually damage in the sealing of the hose pipe. So you can see a template being pushed through there in the third picture from the left. And that's a very common, inexpensive way to template these pipes before ordering. And you can see us checking for clearances on the bolt lines there on the right-hand side. But that was about 500 linear feet of roughly 12 by 8, 12-foot span, 8-foot rise pipe barge. The original spec was for a steel liner through here. In this instance, the contractor didn't want to weld 500 linear feet of steel liner, so they opted to use our glass reinforced plastic pipe as an alternative. So they were able to get this 500 feet in approximately 6 days. And that, obviously that doesn't include the grouting, but they were able to push all of that pretty quick. And there she is, all done. Looking really nice.
Yeah.
Worth noting, we can, in fact, the liner we're installing today has baffles in it. We also have a roughened invert in our system that's going in underneath me right now, which is kind of neat. We can do different textures, and so why I like this solution so much is it's uber customizable, as Michael mentioned earlier. So we can texture the invert if you want the critters to crawl across it, salamanders, turtles, what have you. We can put baffles. We can do both texture and baffles. In this instance, you can see that the existing culvert was already rehabbed with a shotcrete invert. And so this pair, I'm going to call it a pear shape, really made an ideal shape for getting through that shotcrete invert that was already in existence there. Here's the job I referenced earlier. So this is the pipe that's about 45 miles north of me. If you could go to the next slide. So a lot of these pipes that they egged back in the 1950s due to their thoughts that they thought it was going to be superstructural, they actually stayed all egg. Instead of becoming round, they stayed vertically ellipsed. So that is a shape a geometry that we can make with the GRP. And that one had baffles in it as well. You can see in the top right photo, that was underneath about 28, 30 feet of cover. So instead of digging up the highway, we were able to slip line that in flowing water, as you see on the left-hand side. Cassie, I don't know if that video will play, but that image on the left, I think, is a video.
Yep.
So you can actually see them pulling. Again, they used a winch, and they just pulled these segments in one at a time, and then align the spigot, and they were able to just close that gap up another 6 inches and get it completely tight.
Very cool. I think that wraps up all of our slides, Dawn. I believe that was all the projects you were going to show.
Very cool.
I've already gotten some of you to send me, oh wait, we got a question. Can you just replace the damaged portion of the culvert, or the entire section needs to be replaced?
So in this instance, I'm not sure if they're talking about the hose pipe or the liner if it gets damaged.
Yeah, I would.
Are they talking about the hose pipe, Cassie?
I think they're talking about the hose pipe, if I had to guess. Yeah, he's talking about the hose pipe.
I'll give my opinion. So very, very difficult. In this instance, the photo you see here on the bottom right, to replace pipes or plates, I should say. So if you're in a multi-plate and you're underneath the middle of the highway, it's very hard to replace one plate for another plate, because that geometry, ultimately over 50, 60 years has changed under the backfill loading conditions, right? So try to get in there. The last thing you want to do is remove a plate and have all this backfill fall in on you. We've slip lined pipes that you've seen that, back 30 years ago, someone tried to stitch a new plate onto an old plate and tack welded it or something like that. It doesn't last long at all. Now, if you're talking about just replacing an end section or a piece that's off the shoulder of the road, that's a different story. But in my opinion, it's very difficult / not recommended to try to replace a plate.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say in all the inspections that Dawn's done, I've done, Michael does, is even if you thought you could patch a specific section, you still are technically, whatever the design life was of the rest of the sections, whether it's 30 years or 40 years, that pipe is still degrading, right? So you fixed one section, but you still have the design life of the other sections that hasn't been addressed. So fixing it all at once and restructuring under a roadway is what we would recommend almost always.
Yep.
Dawn
Absolutely.
mentioned an example where relining was performed in the wet with 2.5 foot of flowing water present. In this example, was a dewatering plan implemented after the reline to achieve dry conditions for grouting around the reline?
Yeah, so this is the project right here that we're looking at. And in this instance, the water was then basically cofferdammed using sandbags and a piece of corrugated pipe, just standard drain pipe, to navigate the water in through the liner now while we build the bulkheads around the ends and grout the annulus. So liner's pushed in the wet, you navigate the water into the liner now, and then you build your bulkheads around the ends at the inlet and the outlet, and you can grout the annulus because now the water is flowing through your pipe. You don't have to worry about putting your bypass pipe up and over the road. It's kind of a nice thing
Great.
to allow for ease of construction.
Okay, now I think I've hit them all.
Those were great questions.
Yeah, we got a lot of really good questions today. So this will be recorded and I will send you guys all the recording out. I've already got a few of you that have sent notes in wanting the certs, so I will get those out to you this afternoon. And as always, all of us are available. When I send out the link for the video, I will include Dawn's information, Michael's, and mine. If you guys have any questions, now that it's kind of winter, not quite winter, fall, but we're back to like being in the office a little more than in the summer when we're just on job sites all the time. We'll probably be doing a couple of these a month. So I'll be emailing you guys and we look forward to a lot more great conversations.
Thank you guys so much for including me. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Dawn.
it.
Thanks for jumping on while you're on your job site.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Take care.